What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I want to break down what's going on with SPY, Nvidia, Tesla, the QQQ, and a couple of tickers out there. I want to break down what the technicals are suggesting, what's going on with the markets, and what data is going to be dropping for tomorrow to dictate the entire flow of the day. I'm also going to talk about what's happening with earnings and how all of these things may affect all these different stocks. Before I do anything like this, before I talk about what's going on with all these different tickers, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer runs very soon, in just about 2 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Alright, so in my video from the morning, I told you all that the market's going to likely try to pop and attempt to fight around this 458 area. Maybe break a little bit higher than that before it starts to sell off going into the afternoon. Then I told you that we'd likely see this thing come all the way down to around this, like 455.5 area, very close to that, if not like around that area. But we came down to about 456 near the bottom of the day, so a little bit higher than expected. But then I told you that at the very end of the day, expect the market to start pumping, maybe during power hour or so. We didn't really pump during power hour as a whole. We actually dropped during power hour for the very beginning. But during the last 10 minutes, the thing I told you about ended up happening because the market went from 456 all the way up to almost 458 in just 10 minutes. It was a crazy pump at the very last seconds. Why did they do this? Because remember what today is. It's the last day of July, and they want the market to hold up and look a lot better on the balance sheets. That's basically what the fund managers were doing, and they pumped us at the very end to get their numbers to look a lot better for their different investors, for their clients, and the list goes on. So that was all part of their plan. And that is exactly what I suspected would happen. And that is what technically happened at the very end. But it didn't really happen the way I thought it would. I thought maybe like during power hour, we'd see the market start to uptrend a bit. And then during like the last 30 minutes, we'd see the market try to uptrend. It ended up just happening at the last 10 minutes, which is still pretty crazy. But now the question is, what's going to happen for tomorrow? What levels should you be watching? Well, let me just mention that SPY is kind of stuck right now in a range going back and forth between support and resistance. This is what it looked like for the past week. If we just look at it, we haven't really moved that much. I mean, there were some instances where we saw big moves because of FOMC and some data. But besides that, we've been stuck between like 454 and about 458 for the majority of the time, back and forth and back and forth. There were some instances where we broke below it, but we came right back up. The market is very stationary right now, and I do expect it to remain kind of like this for a while. But then we have some massive catalysts coming out later on for the week that will affect it. And that's going to be earnings over the next couple of days. But before that, what about for tomorrow? Could there be a little bit of volatility because of something big? And the answer is yes. We do have some important data that's going to dictate how the market moves. That's going to be the job openings report. Now, in the beginning, before the jobs numbers come out, 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI. This is just one of the PMIs that's used by the S&P. And then this is going to be 15 minutes after the market opens. So expect some volatility then. And then 30 minutes after the market opens, wherever you are around the world, we have the ISM PMI report. Same thing, we might see some volatility because of this. But the bigger thing is going to be the JOLTS job openings report. This is going to be huge, and the job quits. Now, why is this so important? The unemployment or jobs numbers that are going to be coming out at 10 o'clock a.m. tomorrow, 30 minutes after the market opens. This is going to cause lots of volatility because whatever this tells us about the current jobs sector will give us a good hint about what the Fed is going to likely do, or at least how the Fed would see things. So remember, the forecast is about 9.5 million. The consensus is about 9.61. We want something like in the middle between these two, which is going to be completely fine. If it's too high, this might not be the best for the markets. I mean, the markets can interpret that differently. Either they think the markets is just doing fine, or they could also argue that the Fed may have to be more hawkish. So we'll see what the reaction is once the numbers come out. And if the numbers are way too low, like somewhere around like 9.5 million, just for example, or I'm sorry, lower than that, like 9.2 million, something very, very low, this could scare some investors into thinking that there could be a recession. The numbers are not looking too good, and it may actually like interfere with the soft landing narrative. So the best thing for the markets to hold up and maybe even pump a bit would be if we get something very close to what the forecast is, maybe a little bit higher than that, like 9.55 million or something like that. That's what we're going to be watching for. These job numbers will affect how the whole market moves. So just be very careful. I can't really predict them perfectly, but I can tell you some ranges to watch for on SPY and what's very likely to happen. Now, let me also add that for earnings tomorrow, we have Uber, Pfizer, and Caterpillar all announcing their earnings in the morning. And after the market closes, we have AMD and Starbucks and Pinterest all coming out. For Wednesday, we have CVS, Shopify, PayPal, and just a couple of others. And for Thursday, we have the notorious Amazon, Apple, and Coinbase all reporting earnings. They're all going to be very, very important, especially these two. So some big stuff is still happening in the markets. Now let's talk about the markets. How are things looking? Well, we look very sideways on SPY. We haven't really made a crazy big move. We haven't really moved too hard in one direction. Yes, we had this like pump right here, but besides that, market is still getting tighter, even like right here. And what I suspect is this would be like my suspicion of the market. We might, tomorrow is a little hard to predict because of all the data, the jobs numbers. Maybe we have like another sideways day. Maybe it's not too bad if we do come down. But then going into like Wednesday and beyond, I think the market's going to possibly try to uptrend a little bit because we're going to be approaching Amazon and Apple's earnings. And I think these two might start to uptrend approaching their earnings. PayPal may also do the same thing. So that could happen. Then we're going to see a reaction to PayPal's earnings going into Thursday. And then we're going to see what happens with the big tech stocks from that point on. And then they're going to determine if the market ends up getting a correction or if the market starts to rally and continue to break out. I'd be very careful with Amazon and Apple if you're going to play them because they are quite highly valued right now, especially Apple. And I'd just be very careful. But for now, that's like my more like, I would say like more longer term view for like the week compared to like my short term views for like the daily charts. For now, what am I seeing on SPY? Well, it got a really nice pump at the very end of the day, up in the after hours as well. I think it's going to open very close to where we are, very flat, and then we're going to see some big reactions to the PMI reports and the jobs openings. If we get the good report and the market likes the jobs numbers, we're going to see this thing retest 458, maybe try to break above it and get closer to 459, and then start to slow down as the day goes on. Very similar to today. If the jobs numbers are very bad and the market does not like what it's seeing, okay, we're going to see the market likely start to downtrend and we're going to retest 457. If that fails us, we could come all the way down to about 456.25, 456 levels like that. If not, all the way down to 455.5. However, if we do come down here, I think at the end of the day, the market could still try to bounce at the very end and then just close very, very much kind of close to where we are currently. And what I mean by that is I don't see the market like tanking too hard or pumping too hard. I think it's still going to be kind of flat overall. I think these moves are not that big for the market compared to like what we've seen in the past. And that's what I'm basically seeing for SPY for the time being. Now, one play that's holding up quite nicely is SoFi. We saw a lot of buyers stepping in, forming this bullish triangle. This could start pushing into the 12s very soon. It looks more bullish. IWM, for now, what I'm basically anticipating is there might be a good opportunity to load up on it, but I would be careful with this because, like I said before, we're going to wait and see what happens to the market for the next couple of weeks. And then, there could be good buying opportunities. But the current trend right now, it's just showing that we're at some heavy resistance, 199 to 200. I believe we could test and maybe cool off a little bit for the temporary time being. And we will see if this thing could get a breakout. But for now, I'm just being very patient with it. And we're going to wait and see what happens with Amazon and Apple's earnings. For Tesla, we are still sandwiched between the 250 EMAs on the 4-hour time frame. Now, we're trying to break out. Tesla wants to break out. You can see it wants to, but it's struggling to do so for now. It needs a catalyst. It needs some big piece of news to break out. It needs something. And the news has been dictating Tesla quite a bit for the last week. For now, it's still stuck. So you're going to be watching. Could we be forming like a double bottom formation and trying to make our way up? That is a possibility. That's why I was leaning a little bit more bullish on Tesla. We're also forming a potential bullish wedge right over here. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to break, to the upside. But what I will say is it's more likely it's going to try to do so, looking at how it's holding up above our 20 EMA for the majority of the day, and it's just getting stopped by the 50. If it breaks this, you're going to be watching 270 on Tesla. If that breaks, there's 274, then potentially all the way up to about 280 if we break that for the imbalance fill, which is all the way up here. Now, could we break out? It's a possibility. We need some kind of news. We need to see some very, very positive headlines for Tesla that could help this thing break out. For now, we're not seeing it, so I would assume that it's likely going to just continue to trade sideways like it did today. Didn't really do too much, but once the news comes out, we will see which direction it breaks in. Now, the bears are going to say it should reject. Even though this is less likely, there's a possibility of it. If it breaks below 265, It's going to come all the way down to potentially 262.5. If that fails us, there's 260, and below that, then we have this unfilled gap at like 256. I would say it looks more bullish than bearish. It looks like it wants to break out. It really looks like it wants to, but we need some kind of catalyst. So watch for confirmation just to be safe. Now we have a big one coming out. We have Neo stock, which is continuing to rip to the upside, up another 3.8%. We're going to be watching deliveries when they come out. They could come out as soon as tomorrow, if not by Wednesday, depending on when China, ends up reporting them. When Neo ends up reporting them specifically, I'm not 100% sure about the exact date. It sometimes changes. Some days it's going to be like exactly on August 1st, at least for us in the US. Sometimes it's going to be on some other day. But the numbers look very strong for them. The first 23 days were very, very strong for July based off registrations. And it looks like the last 8 days should be relatively strong too for the new ES6. This thing could pump very nicely tomorrow, gap up and just keep going if we get some strong numbers. And we're just going to wait and see when they come out. Could be coming out tomorrow, maybe the day after, who knows. Whenever they come out, it's going to be very, very bullish. I'm very excited for this. And this thing, if it starts running, you're going to be watching a retest of 15.8. If that breaks, 16, 16.8, and then 17, 17.5 are all targets on this thing. It could hit those levels in just one day if we get some crazy good numbers. If the bears come in, and let's just say the numbers end up being bad, which I doubt, but it's a possibility, you're going to be watching 14.11, then 12.75. I don't think it's going to retrace like that, but always be prepared for anything just to be safe. I am still leaning more bullish on Neo. I think it's going to get a big reaction either tomorrow or the day after for a very bullish move, most likely. For Aapl, I want to see this thing continue to uptrend. If it breaks above this 196 level, you're going to be watching 197.2, 198.5, and potentially 200 for Aapl. I would love to see this thing pump right before earnings, and then we will see what happens after that. It formed a nice accumulation right over here, continue to push up. Could this be like, this is like a cup and handle as well, and it might get a breakout like really, really soon. If it gets that breakout, I'm going to be watching 200. I would love to see 200 right before earnings. And if that's the case, we will see what the reaction is until then. But for now, it's starting to trade a little sideways. It's just not really like pumping too hard. I'm going to be watching for a retracement to 195.25, then potentially one. I don't really see 194, but at least 195 or so. A bounce off that and very sideways price action. Then a pump by the time we get to like Wednesday/Thursday. Maybe we're going to see 200. And then we might see this thing react to earnings. I don't know which way it's going to go. For the triple Q, it's kind of stuck between 385 as resistance and then 382 as support, going back and forth and back and forth. Now, I just want to mention that it hasn't really made a major move just yet. If it breaks 385, we do have a nice setup for it. Right over here, you can see this is like a cup and handle kind of, also like a Wyckoff accumulation. Break above 385, this thing's going to go flying for 388. Maybe this happens over the next couple of days because of Aapl potentially pumping and other stocks too. That's a possibility. It does look a little bit more bullish, but just to be safe, we have to see how it reacts. Now, in my opinion, I think the odds favor it possibly cooling off tomorrow, then getting a retest of 385 and just trading sideways once again. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens with the JOLTS job openings and all that data. And just to be clear, it does look more bullish right now. We have a nice inverse head and shoulder structure. I would love to see it continue. And Nvidia closed very flat. It also has a nice inverse head and shoulder structure. I'm going to be looking for that final pump on Nvidia. I want to see it hold above 470. Then we have 474, and then finally 478 to 480, which is my target. It looks quite nice from a technical standpoint, but we have to see this thing try to break out. Now, AMD's earnings could be a big factor for it coming out for tomorrow. It is nearing a bearish cross on the PPO, so it might gap down tomorrow. So just be a little careful before it tries to bounce. And AMD's earnings, if AMD kills it and it starts running, we could see Nvidia follow it and try to get back to these high levels. That's going to be impactful for it. If the opposite happens, you're going to be watching like 464, for example. Then below that, we have like 460, 458, and beyond. I don't think it's going to tank that hard. I just think the odds heavily favor 478 to 480 eventually coming. And we will see. From a technical standpoint, it does look more bullish, but we'll just have to wait and see. AMD has earnings very soon, so be very careful with this. It may start to pump a little bit approaching its earnings. I'm going to be watching this 115 resistance get above that, then it has potential to make its way up closer to like the 117s. It could pump a little bit approaching its earnings, then we will see what happens after that. For Netflix, looking at Netflix, it formed a nice possible. This is almost like an inverse head and shoulders, kind of looking like one is kind of slanted though. And it came up to this imbalance fill all the way up here. Looks to me like Netflix is looking a little bit more bullish. It actually looks a little bit more bullish. It may retrace and retest like 435, 431 or so, then try to bounce. And if we get the bounce and break the high of the day, it could be well on its way for about 450 very soon. It looks like it's trying to, break out. I'm going to be watching for a retracement first, then before it continues, and we will see from there. But that's what I'm going to be watching for. And that's supported 431, 428, 422.5 as our supports. I think it's going to retrace to at least one of these levels first before it tries to continue. Finally, I'm going to just kind of skip over SPX just for now because I want to get this video done with quickly. I don't want to make this too long as well. The SQQQ is trying to hold up, looking a little weak though. It looks to me like it has like a head and shoulders forming and may have a little bit of downside to this like 16.38 level. It could be because the QQQ is on the verge of potentially popping a bit. So maybe this thing gaps up a little, then starts dropping more. Could be because of the QQQ. The VIX is still not very strong, very, very sideways, not looking the best. Uh, we could be seeing it retest this low down here, like 13.2, but nothing too big from it. It's just very sideways, not really giving us enough information. The dollar did pump a little bit more today, but it's not really impacting the markets as much as it has before. This could be used for manipulation as well. Now, this structure is looking a little bit more bullish. It looks a little bit more bullish, but that alone is not going to dictate the market. It could dictate the market maybe early, or it may just take a little bit longer to do so. Because what's interesting is the dollar used to have a very, very, very strong inverse correlation with the markets. Now the strength of that has been going down. But later on down the line, I could see this affecting the markets. It just, could take a while. And we're just going to wait and see, because when things like this happen, sometimes the dollar could just make unexpected moves, and it is used for manipulation. So, sometimes even the VIX is used the same way. The UVXY is the same thing. It happens with that as well. For Coinbase, continuing to look pretty decent, trying to hold up. It has earnings coming out in just a couple of days. I think that, like I said before earlier, this thing could come down a little bit before it gets a pump approaching its earnings. So maybe it gaps down tomorrow and starts pumping. And then it might try to pump approaching its earnings. Then it will react to them after that. For Amazon, it's holding up quite nicely. If it breaks above this resistance, we could be watching and trying to make its way up to about 135.9, maybe almost 136 becomes a possibility. It looks more bullish. We're going to be watching this resistance around 136 on Amazon. It has more room for upside, and I think approaching its earnings is going to look relatively nice. For Meta, this thing got the retracement we were talking about, coming down to about 320, if not around like this 20 moving average, this 20 EMA. And it came down a little bit. I was hoping for a bounce today, though at the end of the day, I didn't really get the bounce. So we're going to be watching and try to base around these levels. Let's see if we could base around the 20. If it does base around here and bounce, then we could try to see this thing make its way back up to about 325 or so, and then we will see after that. But for now, guys, that's what I have for this video. It is looking a little bit more bearish on the 4-hour time frame, so it may actually gap down a little bit, test this, 20 EMA, if not to the 50, and then try to bounce. But we'll see. And that's what I have for this video. I want to keep this one kind of short. That's what I have for the video. So please remain calm, cool, and collected. Do what you have to do and watch these levels. And be prepared for some data. Be prepared for some data coming out for tomorrow. We have the JOLTS job openings. This will be impactful tomorrow. So be prepared for that and expect some volatility. All right, guys, have a great day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Market to the moon and peace out.